and thank you for joining us. This is Linda Chinyam, Chair for the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners, and we thank you for joining us this evening for a board forum on the reopening plans. I'm going to ask folks who are participating to please be certain to keep your phones and your computers on mute, your mics, unless you are actually speaking, so that we'll all be able to hear better. Thank you so much. Our format for this evening, our forum is for 90 minutes. We have a presentation, as we had mentioned in the information about the forum regarding the plans, especially around looking at safety issues for reopening. And then following that, we will then open for comments. And so I'm going to invite Dr. Santelises and staff for the presentation, and then I'll be back after that. Thank you. Dr. Santelises.
Thank you, Commissioner and Chair Chinya. Welcome, everyone, and to all of the commissioners that are here tonight, as well as the public who have come to share at this board forum. Thank you. We will begin this evening within the frame. I'm going to ask Dr. Jenny Wu, who will be helping with just brief slides to help us talk through within that 30-minute time frame that the board chair just described, some of the key points to this presentation. I'm just making sure that we're all set. But as we get ready, there we go. Thank you, Joe. So as we get ready to begin, and Joe, you can, I don't know if it's you or Dr. who's clicking, but whoever is, we can move to the next slide once we get started. Thanks so much. Just by way of reminder for the public, that this discussion of in-person learning is really taking place in a larger context. It's one where first and foremost, we really are moving to address some of what we know that families and students are experiencing, and that is that virtual learning is not working for every student in Baltimore City. We will absolutely be rolling out adjustments and feedback to virtual learning, but we have large numbers of students, large enough numbers of students and families who really are saying that our responsibilities to all students in the school district and all families, and that includes those for whom virtual learning is not working. And so when we talk about in-person learning, the frame is not just opening up schools for the sake of opening up schools, but it is about making sure that the disproportionate impact to particular students, particular communities, offers families a choice around the kind of learning experience that they want for their students. And number two, with a secondary priority of making sure that those spaces within schools, even in the midst of this health challenge, are safe for young people as well as for staff. Next slide. So one of the things that we know about in-person learning, first and foremost, is that there are a number of factors that clearly weigh in to the need for in-person learning. There is kind of widespread agreement that for large portions of children, the in-person learning experience is the optimal experience. We know that, for example, with our youngest learners, the development of social and emotional skills, we know that for large numbers of our students with disabilities, the in-person learning provides the kind of interaction that really does help progress, help them to progress. And we also know that schools, and it's never been on, I would say, more clearer display than in the last 7 months, that schools have been charged with actually reaching beyond some of the immediate schooling needs and actually addressing things like nutritional needs, safe learning environments, access to physical activity. These are all things that we not only have been witnessing, but that we have been hearing from our families. We also know that not all families are ready. I've said before that we know that a full 50% in our most recent survey of families still want to maintain a virtual learning experience. And so this presentation is really geared towards the fact that we want to share with the board and with the public the ways that we are working towards safely providing more in-person learning opportunities, that it's not haphazard, but it is really targeting prioritized groups of students who actually want this experience for students, and we want it for their students and make this available for families. Next slide. And then within our in-person learning opportunities, just want to remind everyone, remind the board that we're really talking about prioritized student groups. Some I've mentioned before, early learner students with disabilities. We also see large numbers of our English learners within the district, within our families, who really are expressing that the in-person learning opportunities are best for some of those students as well. And frankly, where we've even had a lot of early uptick in our English learner families in a real desire to return to in-person learning. We have consistently, and while we've increased from the early days of opening school, from 65% of students logging in to 80%. That 80% still represents close to 16,000 students that are struggling with virtual learning. They are not logging on. Our principals see it, our teachers see it, and certainly our families are expressing that. Again, homeless students as well have been really large. There's been a large demand from our homeless families to make sure that there are in-person stable environments and routines. And we see this even in our student learning centers that the 15 that we have raised up with Rec and Parks colleagues, that a large number of homeless families are taking advantage of that opportunity, as well as what you see here, transition grades, 6th and 9th graders, and what we're hearing from a number of our high school leaders and leadership teams, that the CTE, the career technical experiences for young people. So these would be prioritized student groups that really are driving this limited entry, and I would say continuation of work that we began this summer with teachers and families who opted in this summer through student learning centers, and now really continuing to offer these prioritized student groups and families this option. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over, because I am mindful of the 30 minutes, to Dr. Jenny Wu, who's going to just walk us briefly through the timeline for the rollout of in-person learning opportunities. Dr. Wu?
Great. Thank you, Dr. Santolisa. So I'll just piggyback on what Dr. Santolisa said. This is really a continuation of in-person learning opportunities that we started rolling out in the summer. So you will see here on the left-hand side an indication of the summer programming we rolled out in person for about 200 students at 6 different sites. For the summer programming, we really prioritize students who are not engaging in virtual learning, as well as students who are 2 or more grade levels behind. Then at the end of September, we rolled out our student learning centers, as well as a few special education classrooms and small classrooms. And you see there the numbers, the student learning centers, we're serving approximately 900 students across 13 sites. For special education, we're serving approximately 55 students at 8 different sites. And for ESOL, we're serving approximately 100 students at 4 different sites. And you'll see there we have, as Dr. Santolisa said, prioritize certain student groups who really need this in-person learning to have that opportunity for in-person learning. Our next steps going forward are on November 9th, we will be opening our separate public day schools, as well as specific specialized programs for our pre-K and K students. As of right now, we are aware of approximately 100 students who have chosen, through conversations with their families, to return to in-person learning on November 9th at 3 different sites. For the pre-K specialized programs, we have heard from approximately 50 students' families that they would like to return, and they will be at 5 different sites. And then the last part of the rollout for in-person learning for this semester will be on November 16th, and that will be available at additional both traditional and charter school sites. Our plan is to roll that out at approximately 25 different schools. We are currently in the process of planning for that, and we have really targeted those prioritized student groups that are listed below. Those are the same prioritized student groups that Dr. Santelises just spoke about in the previous slide. Because we know that those groups of students really need some of this hands-on in-person learning to support them. And as we have said all along, this is only for families who choose that. Any families who are not interested in the in-person learning, they have absolutely the option to remain all virtual in their learning experience. And so with that, I will turn it over, I believe, to Cleo.
Thanks, Dr. Wu. Good evening. My name is Cleo Hirsch, and I work for the Chief of Staff. When we came to you in August with our reopening plan, we mentioned that there were some guiding principles that we would be following throughout this process. And paramount to those principles is our focus on health and safety. So this evening, we're going to be talking about some of the health and safety measures that we are taking as a part of our reopening plan to really enact the plan that Dr. Wu just laid out for you. Next slide. So just to start, a reminder that we have had some amazing staff working since really the beginning of school closure in March in person, who have been on the ground every day in our schools, meeting the needs of our students and community members. So I just want to acknowledge our food service workers and our custodians in particular, who from the first day of school closure have been true heroes out in schools, ensuring that our emergency meal sites ran, that our schools remain safe, clean places that the community could access for vital resources such as picking up computers. And these folks not only have really served our community valiantly during this time, but also through the work that we've done at our emergency meal sites, where there was often not just food and nutrition workers and custodians, but also we had National Guardsmen and women, we had site leads, and we even had youth workers who are working to distribute food to community members, as well as hundreds of community members who are coming by the site each day in a socially distant fashion outdoors to pick up food for our students and for community members. And through that work, we really have become experts in how to create safe in-person environments and enact health and safety rules that keep folks safe. Since then, we have called back staff as necessary to continue to meet the needs of our students and our community, and that includes the staff at the student learning centers, principals and assistant principals, and district office staff who are supporting key functions of the district. Next slide. So to roll out the plan that Dr. Wu spelled out for you earlier, there will be other staff members who will be asked to return in November to support the groups of students for whom we know virtual learning has really been challenging because of, be it their age or the way that they learn. So specifically, we are focusing on our kindergarten and pre-K students, as well as other special ed students. And so the staff that support those students will be at certain schools, will be asked to report in November to begin supporting those students with in-person learning. Next slide. Next, I just want to talk for a moment about our community indicators dashboard. So this is a dashboard that our state health department has issued for public schools across the state to follow. We work very closely with our public health advisory committee that includes—
Aren't you cold?
We work very closely with our Public Health Advisory Committee that includes experts from Johns Hopkins and Morgan and University of Maryland, as well as our partners at the Health Department, to closely track this data to ensure that we have a sense of what's going on with the spread of COVID-19 in our community. So just to walk through how we use this dashboard, we start by looking at test positivity rate. So the metric we use is the last 7-day average test positivity. So today in Baltimore City, we are at 2.7%. So that moves us to the left on the dashboard, which is good. That's moving in the direction that the state indicates, puts us on the left side of this decision tree. From there, we look at the new case rate. So today in Baltimore, we're at 13.5, and that represents the last 7-day average daily new cases per 100,000 people. So if you look at the box here, you'll see that as we get closer to 5 or lower, that's where we would really be looking at expanded in-person programs. So really looking to bring back, the vast majority of our students. Where you get closer to 15, that's where you want to keep limited in-person programs. And again, the plan that the district has laid out really is these targeted, limited, small group instruction that will be at a subset of schools for a subset of students. And so we are well within the range of this decision-making tree. There's something else I want to point out, which is just at the bottom, you see that we will reassess new case rates if we see a spike or a sharp change in one direction or another. When that happens, we pull together our Public Health Advisory Committee. We work closely with Dr. Duraza and the team at the Health Department to ensure we understand what the data means for us and how it might impact our planning and our plans for in-person learning. So next, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Sharika Bolden. Thank you.
Thank you, Cleo. So in addition to keeping an eye on those metrics that Cleo mentioned, there are 9 key mitigation strategies that have been identified. The first 3 that you see here on this list are in large individual actions to be taken, and a variety of materials and supports have been put in place to help everyone from students to staff, families really understand and adopt these practices. So for example, top of the list, we have social distancing. There are decal signs that have been provided to schools to remind and help provide structure for social distancing, similar to what you would see if you go in a grocery store. Face coverings have been purchased for both staff and students, and videos and signs have been assembled to keep a strong focus on making sure that there is proper hand hygiene that's being followed, as well as soap and paper towels have been provided to schools as well, additional amounts. So the bottom half of this list, the last 6 strategies, really speak to organizational level actions. And they include investments such as desk shields, new upgraded filters, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment, as well as enhanced cleaning protocols, which we'll talk about some more this evening as well. Next slide. So to help along the adoption of those strategies, there's a new web-based training tool for all staff to take. And the tool really focuses on helping staff understand what's expected of them and what they can expect of the organization to respond to COVID-19 in a safe way. Next slide. So I mentioned social distancing already. Just wanted to talk a little bit about how that unfolds in the classroom. So schools are being provided with this space planning guide, which includes both a written document and video tutorials to make sure that classrooms are set up properly to ensure that there is 6-foot distancing within the classroom. Next slide. And so finally, as I hinted to earlier, I want to touch upon air quality. There are 3 key actions that are being focused on here. First are upgraded filters in schools where possible, as well as a focus on increasing ventilation through mechanical means. And then finally, inspections and preventative maintenance to make sure that equipment is in good working order. And so with that, I will return it back to Cleo to talk a little bit more about the SLCs.
Thank you, Sharika. So what we want to do now is just give you a sense of what does this actually look like on the ground? What does it feel like for students and staff and administrators who are running in-person programming around these new health and safety routines in this new climate? So I'm just going to walk you through some of the components of what a day in the life of our Student Learning Center program looks like. Go ahead to the next slide. So we start with morning arrival, and just like you would want somebody out front of the school greeting your child and welcoming them into the school community, we do that through the Student Learning Center, and it only looks a little different now because we include a temperature check and health screening questions as a part of our morning welcoming ritual. After the kiddos get their temperature checked and they have answered the questions that we ask, the questions ask how the kids are feeling, if they have any symptoms, and if they've been around anyone who's sick. We move on to the inside of the school where we follow certain key morning routines, including, of course, washing your hands, using hand sanitizer. And then we also are able to offer the kids breakfast. So you see this picture on the right of a little kindergartner who has just finished eating her breakfast. She has dutifully eaten her breakfast, washed her hands, and now she's getting a movement break. And I just want to highlight that to show that while there are a lot of rules and we take it very seriously and we ensure the kids are social distancing, we also try to still incorporate social emotional learning and movement into the day so that school remains a warm, welcoming place. It just looks a little different now because the kiddos have to stay exactly next to their desk while they do their morning movement routine or whatever it is that they're doing. Next slide. So classroom setup. So here's a real live classroom with real live Baltimore City School students in it. And in this classroom, you'll see a couple core components of our health and safety standard operating procedures. So all of the students here have a mask. I do actually want to highlight the student in the back right-hand corner who's finishing up her breakfast. Students are able to unmask to eat their breakfast behind a desk shield. They then wash their hands, they put on their mask, and they resume learning for the day. Once they're in their virtual learning mode, they keep their masks on throughout the entire time. You also see the desk shields here that every child is issued. The desks are spaced 6 feet apart. And we also have air filters or purifiers in each classroom to ensure that there is that great airflow and circulation. And essentially the filters serve almost like an N95 mask for your face, but instead they're sucking in the air for the whole classroom and keeping it really clean. Next slide. We also do materials a little bit differently now because of health and safety rules. So we no longer have shared materials. So each child is issued individual academic supplies that they keep at their desk with them. Pencils, pens, crayons, markers, glue. We have little fidgety things like Play-Doh here. They also have either individual enrichment and recreation supplies such as yoga mat, chalk, jump rope, things that would promote socially distant play. Or if there's a set of balls, for example, soccer balls where each kid has their own soccer ball, in between one cohort using it and the next, we would spray and sanitize everything to make sure that it's super clean. So we don't really do communal supplies the way, schools perhaps did in the past. Students are also issued reusable masks. And again, you see those desk shields on the desks. Lastly, in our Student Learning Center program, each child has their own computer and their own set of headphones. Next slide. So I just want to talk a little bit about creating what we call classroom bubbles with the younger kids. Sometimes you'll hear them referred to as cohorts or pods. Basically what this is you group together a group of students as well as their teachers or the adults that are supporting them, and you try to create a tight community, a bubble, that will determine, that really limits the number of humans that interact with each other within the school. So it's not like school is just open and the hallways are flooded. Rather, it's a very tight-knit community of students and teachers who are assigned to one another. And we do that to promote social distancing and minimize the number of people that you come into contact with. And it also helps us with contact tracing. So within the bubble, we still emphasize that you must stay 6 feet apart, you must keep your mask on, you must follow all the health and safety rules. But if somebody in the bubble were to start feeling sick, we know that they've all been in the same class together and that those are the only people who have interacted with one another. And this just helps us with the contact tracing process and making sure that the school community stays really safe. Next slide. I do want to flag that we can still do enrichment and recreation activities. In fact, that's a huge value add of our partnership with Rec and Park and the Student Learning Center program. There's all sorts of ways to promote safe play, keep kids far apart, but get kids back outside and moving. I mean, that's been a huge loss in this pandemic, is kids' ability to play and go outside and move around. And so we are really emphasizing that at the Student Learning Center and making sure kids get safe time outside to move and learn and grow together. Next slide. Cleaning routines, we mentioned this earlier, but cleaning is so important and it's a very important part of our program. So we do more frequent cleaning and disinfecting of spaces based on the level of use. We also specifically clean high touch surfaces such as door handles, light switches, faucets regularly throughout the day, just to make sure that if there is a surface that more than one person has touched, it remains clean and safe. We're also providing increased training for our custodians on cleaning protocols, both virtual training as well as in-person training and support on the ground. And then schools are also provided with checklists that enable us to track the frequency of cleaning key areas such as the bathrooms, the classrooms, and the office spaces, so we really know that those areas are staying safe. So next I'm going to pass it over to go ahead and next slide. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Charles Hall, who's going to talk about COVID-19 response.
Thanks, Cleo. Good evening to everyone. I am going to, as Cleo said, talk a little bit about our COVID response, just so that you'll know all of our COVID response processes are guided by the Maryland Health Department. And one of the tools that the Maryland Health Department has provided for us is the decision tree, which you see here on the screen. And the decision tree is incorporated in our reopening plan. The decision tree helps us determine COVID-like symptoms, such as the ones that you'll see listed on the left-hand side of this slide. And what you will notice is that given the wide range of symptoms, there is a similarity between COVID-like symptoms and the symptoms that we would typically see during cold and flu season. So our approach to COVID response is going to be a very conservative one. And what that means is when we are informed that an employee has COVID-like symptoms, what we would do is we would still ask the person to quarantine. We would ask them to quarantine based on the symptoms. While they're quarantined, if they receive a test, a COVID test that comes back negative, or if they see a medical professional that determines the symptoms they are exhibiting are not COVID-like, those persons would be able to return to work prior to the end of their 2-week quarantine process. And that would be because it's determined that it is not COVID-like in nature. To provide an idea of how we are approaching this and to make sure that everyone understands the contact tracing capacity, what we did was we looked at information from the CDC and the National Association of County and City Health Officials, who suggested that there may be a need of 15 to 30 contact tracers per 100,000 people. So when City Schools is in full operation with students, staff members, contractors, and volunteers in our building, that puts us just under 100,000 people. That means that when we are operating fully in person, City Schools would likely need 15 to 30 FTE dedicated to case investigation and contact tracing. What we do know is that this will be at least a couple of months from now before we get to that point, based on our current plans to remain almost all virtual this fall. So by the end of November, including a couple thousand students, City Schools will likely be operating with about 10% of its full staff and student population being in person on 1 or more days per week. So this means for us, we likely need 2 to 3 fully dedicated contact tracers to meet this need. What we do want you to know is that currently we already have assigned more than this number of staff to this work. We have 4 employee engagement assistants who serve in these roles, recommended by the CDC for the kind of surge capacity. Additionally, there are 3 supervisory staff on the employee engagement team engaged in these activities. And I also participate in the contact tracing and COVID response. We're already planning for the identification of additional contact tracers, including another group recommended for this work by the CDC, community health outreach workers, and other community members with emotional intelligence, good communication and problem-solving skills, and similar cultural, social background as the people we serve. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we approach this with a 5-step process, and the process, even though the one that you see on the screen says employees, this process is used for anyone who will be on site in a city schools building. So regardless of if they're a visitor, a parent, a student, or an employee, we're going to approach it the same way. The first step is the initial notification of a potential or positive COVID case, and that information is collected by a supervisor or a principal. That person, that principal or supervisor, will then notify the COVID reporting and tracing team in HC. That's step 2. So we'll collect all of that information, and when we gather all of that information, we will then reach out to the initial person who's been impacted or identified as a potential or positive COVID case. Once we contact them, we're going to gather some information from them. We're also going to, of course, check on their well-being, see how they're doing. We're going to provide them with some information as well. Step number 4 is when we will then notify the initial individual who's been impacted that they need to quarantine for a 2-week period, and inform them, if they're an employee, we'll inform them of the leave options that are available to them through the emergency paid sick leave option. Step number 5 is where we would then do some contact tracing, and we would notify other parties, both internal and external. So we'll reach out to departments within the district and inform them of the COVID case. We're also going to reach out to the Baltimore City Health Department and the Department of Parks and Recs, if applicable. So if it's at a student learning center, we're going to loop them in as well. And that's the 5 steps that we'll follow for all of our COVID response. Thank you.
Just want to thank the team for that presentation, and I will turn it back over to you, Chair Chinya.
Thank you, Dr. Santelises, and thank you to the team. And we wanted to take time to be certain that this important information was shared as broadly as we could. And so hopefully if you were at the board meeting on Tuesday, you heard some of this, but I'm hoping that this will help people this evening. I'm going to ask our board exec, Mr. Gant, to explain how we're going to go through the next portion as we move into comments from the public.
Thanks, Chair Chinya. Like our typical board meetings, we receive comment in 3 different ways, whether it's a written email, live, or video. So I will just go in order of submission. And the first comment is from Ms. Carrie Brashima, and she is a teacher at Carver and a parent of Francis Scott Key.
She's got to go back and she's talked to the board tonight. So every district's happening there.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Boersma, and I'm the mother of these 2 wonderful 9-year-old twins, Aiden and Emmeline, who attend Francis Scott Key Elementary in Locust Point. And I'm also a teacher in the city at Carver Votech High School in West Baltimore. Recently, I just a minute ago told them that I have been placed back in the school building, been told that I will return November 11th, and that students will come back for in-school learning with me November 16th. As you can tell, they are a little upset and a little scared right now. I've had to explain to them that although I will be back in the school building, they're going to be staying here with their father, who is going to be quitting his job to homeschool them during the virtual learning time. But they are worried about my health and my safety and whether or not everything's going to be okay if I go back. Some of the questions they had, will you get coronavirus? Will you get sick? Will you get fired if you don't go back? Will we lose our house since Daddy has to quit his job? So before we go back, we need to make sure that there are safety precautions so that these 2 guys and their little brother, who I'm not going to be able to tell because I don't want to upset him. But we need to make sure we are set to go back in a safe manner. So Board of Commissioners, school board, please keep in mind that you're not only affecting the lives of students by sending them back to unsafe conditions, but their teachers and their family and their staff members as well. So I thank you for your time. And again, my name is Carrie Boersma. I lived in District 11, and my phone number is 410-718-3338. Thank you.
Next, we have a video from Ms. Rebecca Yenowin of the Teachers Democracy Project.
My name is Rebecca Yenowin, and I'm a parent and an advocate at Teachers Democracy Project. At TDP, we feel like we are pretty informed. We've watched every town hall and board meeting, and we also host our own podcast with a variety of teachers and other educators and district experts, as well as parents, to help us disseminate and discuss information about education issues. Since the town halls began, we've seen hundreds of very specific questions get posed to the district parents and educators answered. While there is general reassurance and rationale for decisions that are provided, this provides only a broad overview of interest, but not the specificity that people are asking for. In these times, people need reassurance that there is a procedure for what exactly happens when, for example, someone chooses not to wear a mask correctly and it goes unenforced. People also want to know a range of other things.
We lost the song.
Christian, we lost sound.
Hello?
Is it possible to go to another while we try to get that working?
Hello? Hello?
Hello, yeah, it was just quiet. I can't hear anything.
We are here. We're having some technical difficulties, and I don't, without the list, I'm trying to get in touch with Mr. Gant, who has the list and things. So please hold on. We are still here. Sorry. Could I ask if there's any of the central staff, if anyone has anyone else has a list, if possibly I could call on someone, if you could share it with us.
Chair Chinya, Christian is saying that he is going to move to the next couple of videos. He's moving
Okay.
some to Joe to share. Because I
Okay.
think some of the upcoming testimony.
Okay, thank you.
Ooh. Hmm.
Yanuin, and I'm a parent and an advocate at Teachers Democracy Project. At TDP, we feel like we are pretty informed. We've watched every town hall and board meeting, and we also host our own podcast with a variety of teachers and other educators and district experts, as well as parents, to help us disseminate and discuss information about education issues. Since the town halls began, we've seen hundreds of very specific questions get posed to the district by parents and educators go unanswered. While there is general reassurance and rationale for decisions that are provided, this provides only a broad overview of areas of interest, but not the specificity that people are asking for. In these times, people need reassurance that there is a procedure for what exactly happens when, for example, someone chooses not to wear a mask correctly and it goes unenforced. People also want to know a range of other things, like if a teacher has to quarantine, how does that impact their sick time? What is the procedure City Schools is using for contact tracing? Will the infection rate be made public? How will the cohort or pod model be safe if resource teachers and related service providers are servicing multiple schools and classes? These are just a few of the questions that we've heard. Though there have been surveys and focus groups, parents and educators alike feel left out of the decision-making process and left in the dark about answers to the nitty-gritty safety and logistical procedures that are in place. We respect and understand the desire to serve the needs of kids who are most struggling in this pandemic. We do not feel that you can serve the needs of children while stepping over the needs of the adults charged with serving them. We urge you to communicate better and include parents and teachers in your decision-making. We also urge you to answer the questions, the hundreds of questions that have come up in the chats, in the town hall sessions, so that people have these answers. Post them on your website. Post them in the chat on the live feeds. Answer.
All right, Christian sent me a couple. I have to download them, so it might take me a moment. So if Christian is able to pull them up, go for it. If not, bear with me momentarily.
My name is Sarah Bafor, and I'm coming to you as a multifaceted stakeholder. I actually hold many roles in our Baltimore City school system. As a former administrator, I'm embarrassed that you would even consider teachers and students coming into in-person learning again when you yourselves, the governing board, will not even meet in person. All of your meetings are being held virtually, yet you're expecting other people to be held at a different standard. I'm disheartened that you, as our governing body, are unwilling to make these tough decisions and to stand up and do what is right for all of the parties that are involved. We're at a crossroads right now in education, and it's time to come to the understanding that public education cannot continue in a one-size-fits-all program. As a teacher, I'm feeling that the lack of support and understanding has gone too far. And in fact, it's the very reason why I retired. The manner in which the teachers and the Teachers Union of Baltimore City have been treated recently is unacceptable. No employee should be forced to work in an environment that is not safe, nor adequately supplied to be with the necessary resources and materials. Teachers and staff should feel as if every support that they could possibly need is available to them, whether it's the personal protective equipment, curriculum, mentoring, or technical supports in the form of physical equipment, software, and training, and some best practices of how to use those pieces of equipment. We need to stop letting teachers just figure it out. As a community member, I want to know at what point will this school board understand that you are here to serve our schools. You are here to serve our students, our families, our teachers, and faculty of all of the Baltimore City school students. I need to know as a community member that the students who are going to be graduating this year and in years to come will have the necessary skills to be functioning adults. As a parent, I'm completely heartbroken. How can you expect me to continue to trust this school board to do what is in the best interest of my child when you refuse to be transparent about plans, when you refuse to put necessary safety plans and precautionary measures in place? You expect things to just magically happen. You're also intending at this point in time to withhold key safety information such as the quality of air filtration and ventilation that my kids' school have, as well as everyone else in the district. How can I trust that my child will be safe when there's no plans for disclosing positive COVID cases after they've been identified? I've been notified every time a meal site's been closed due to a possible COVID case.
Also, while I queue up the next video, I do want to give a shout out to Commissioner McFadden, who was the one who explained to me how to work videos on the system. So if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be able to hear this public comment. So thank you, Commissioner McFadden, in your always teaching ways.
Hello, good morning. I'm Kembo Emmanuel, mother of Shimbidi Emmanuel, Maulo Emmanuel, and Maluke Emmanuel. Yes, I would like them to go back at school. As a single mother with the 3 kids, it's impossible to assist them at all. I have to work, so I cannot to stay home from Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 or 4 a.m. to help them. It has been a big headache since this system began, and it's affecting so much my social life. As a new system, sometimes they are not able to handle the network, and also the attention to the teacher is weak. And I would like them to have a school bus because I can't drop them and pick them up to school. And I would like the school to respect the preventive measure about COVID-19. That is my opinion. Thank you, Kembo Emmanuel.
Okay, this is Christian. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Hopefully we don't have any other issues. Next, we have Mr. Zach Taylor speaking, commenting live. Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Great. So the Baltimore Teachers Union opposes the current plan because it does not provide students and staff the protections and protocols necessary to go to school as safely as we can. And these are protections that exist in other school systems today. We also need our school system to be much more transparent in its data collection and decision-making processes. One of the actions the district should take is maintaining a publicly available log of COVID-19 related school closures and the outcomes of any contact tracing investigations. While we've heard many excuses for why the district is unwilling to do this, the lack of transparency breeds uncertainty, it undermines trust, and it strains the relationship between the public and the school system. Other school systems do this, and Baltimore City schools should do this as well. We believe that transparency for staff, families, and the public at large is worthwhile regardless of what any contact tracing investigation finds. And beyond that, sharing this information allows public health experts throughout the country the important opportunity to analyze data from a major school system and grow our collective understanding of this disease. We deserve to know what is happening in our schools, and this information shouldn't be hidden from the public. We need information so that we can understand what is going on. We also call for much greater transparency in the current decision-making process. As we all heard tonight, the district is using a community indicators dashboard to inform some of its decisions, but we have yet to receive really a precise explanation of key decision points within this chart, such as what is the red line for the district that would end in-person learning. It's also important to note that the chart itself is not very clear. Different decision points blend and they're not articulated. And as mentioned tonight, there is a reassessment called for when the new case rate grows over a rate of 2 cases per 100,000 people within 2 weeks, a threshold that we have nearly surpassed, or perhaps we already actually have surpassed it, but it's not clear what data the district is using for this point. And the current rate isn't included on the slide, and it hasn't been included in past slideshows. And it seems like a very important metric that needs to be part of these discussions. And this data point we hope to see in the future. And we need to also understand, what does a reassessment entail? It's also important to note that when the district first posted this data on Sunday night, the 7-day average was 8.3 cases per 100,000 people over the last 7 days. And then by Tuesday's board meeting, the data point was updated to a much higher number, 11.3 cases per 100,000 people. And then tonight, we're now at 13.5 cases per 100,000 people. And this is all growth just in the last 5 days. And again, we have no information what that growth means within this chart. It didn't receive a public conversation tonight, and it deserves that attention. And we think that the public and staff and families really need to understand where the board, where the staff are on these rapidly growing rates. We need clear red lines that tell the entire community what precise actions the district will take at different transmission rates, under what conditions would a learning center or a reopened school close, and what is the exact data the district is using in all of these metrics. Families and staff shouldn't be surprised at the last minute by announcements. They should be based on data and clear decision points that we all know in advance and we have access to. So these are just a few of the many points that we hope the district considers to make this safer and more transparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Next, we have a video from Ms. Caroline O'Neill.
Hi, my name is Caroline Coleman O'Neill, and I have had the honor of being a Baltimore City school teacher since 2007. I am also currently a Baltimore City Schools parent, as I have two little girls at Hamilton, one in pre-K and one in first grade. I'm really glad that the district is offering opportunities of choice for families because I do not feel safe sending my children back to school in the current coronavirus climate that we have. Unfortunately, it seems as though I won't be afforded the same opportunity despite over a decade of service to the district. While I am safe now, as a middle school teacher, I know and expect to eventually be called up to return to school. What's frustrating most for me as a mother is not that I am going to be having exposure every day. It's that my husband and I have worked so hard to make sure our daughters don't. And then anytime they come in contact with me when I return to work, it will be as if that those efforts didn't matter. And as a parent, my priority is to protect my children. As a teacher, my priority is to educate my students. And I have been doing that every day from this very room. I have been working hard, and I'm going to be honest and say that I've never worked so hard in my life to have engaging strategies and to troubleshoot and to support. And I am doing absolutely everything I feel that I can. But I also don't feel appreciated or valued by the district that's hired me to do it. I love my students and I love my own children. And having to choose now it's terrible.
Next, we have a video from Ms. Amy Joust.
Hi, my name is Amy Joust. I am a city school parent. My son Welly is a second grader at the Green School of Baltimore, and I'm also a city schools teacher. I'm an ESOL teacher at John Rura Elementary Middle School in Greektown, where I teach middle school newcomer students. I am making this video from the spot where I virtually teach my students every day. And I'm making this video to urge the board to exercise its authority in keeping city schools instruction virtual through at least the first semester. At this point in the pandemic, it is not safe for students and teachers and staff members to go back into buildings. The rates in Maryland are rising. Just today, there are over 900 new cases reported, the highest since early August. The positivity rate is increasing and the death rate is increasing. And current hospitalizations as of today is the highest it has been, again, since early August. One of the reasons it's not safe to go back into buildings in Baltimore City also is because of the disorganization on the part of district leadership. 2 weeks ago, when the first in-person instruction plans for returning to in-person instruction were announced, it was done so very chaotically, very confusingly. It was announced via the Baltimore Sun before staff, before families. It's very confusing as to who's going back. There's some reporting and messages from the CEO suggesting that 6th graders and 9th graders and CTE students and homeless students are going back, and pre-K students, where in most cases it seems just to be kindergarten and special education students. These teachers are being forced to go back in person. They also don't know what the details of in-person learning will look like, if they'll be doing both virtual and in-person learning, if the students will be having lunch in the classrooms, what the hours of class will be, what instruction will look like. Will the teachers be doing virtual instruction to the students in the class? All of this is unknown at this point. And even earlier this week at the Teachers Democracy Project Facebook Q&A, the chief of schools said that he did not know if there's been a positive COVID result yet among students in the student learning centers. That is scary. that the district leadership would not know this, and it does not make me feel like I can trust them to keep us safe for in-person learning. So please, I'm urging the board to keep us virtual throughout the first semester. Thank you.
Next, we have a video from Ms. Laura Knapp.
Good evening. My name is Laura Knapp. I am a Baltimore City Public Schools teacher. This is my 14th year with the district, I'm proud to say. I'm also a Baltimore City resident, and I plan on sending my daughter to Baltimore City schools once she's old enough. I am a big believer in the power of our district. I love our students. I love my colleagues. I think that we all work really hard together to do what's best for our students. On that note, I don't think that it is best for anyone in our learning communities to be pushing back into face-to-face in-person instruction at this point in time. I don't believe that it is safe to return just yet. And I have big concerns about the level of transparency coming from the district in terms of what plans are for our return. And I have big questions about what is going to be done in order to keep everyone safe. So some of my big concerns are that the district has not publicly committed to a system of transparently reporting investigations of positive COVID-19 cases that crop up at our school sites. We don't have plans in place with a commitment from the district for any sort of testing program that is comparable to other cities that are similar to ours. We don't have any publicly displayed and reported assessments of our ventilation systems, or any public information letting us know what is being considered in terms of capacity limits for classrooms. I think that the district needs to commit fully to strict adherence to CDC guidelines. And that also needs to be considered scientifically. What is good for 15 minutes of contact is not good for an entire school day of contact in terms of duration of time spent in proximity to one another. I'm concerned that the district has not committed to having a nurse at every school site to administer health screenings in case someone shows up that has some sort of symptoms, or someone in their family that is displaying symptoms. And I'm also really concerned about the fact that we do not have a commitment to keep live virtual instruction available for all, so that decisions can be made to keep vulnerable populations safe. It is not a time to rush any sort of decisions. I urge the district to consider these points, and I really urge the district to hit the brakes as we are moving into this big and very important decision-making process.
Okay. We have an email from Ms. Molly Connor. Give me one moment. Okay, I'm going to share her email. Good evening, BCPSS School Board and City Schools community. I am writing today to implore BCPSS to create a publicly accessible database of school and classroom closures due to COVID exposure. Given how often city schools are the target of bias, media rhetoric, and unfair coverage, I understand where the hesitancy to create a centralized closure law comes from. But schools do not exist in a vacuum, especially now. It is vital that members of the community surrounding a school are aware of any potential transmission risk. If I own a store next to a school that has had 2 classes exposed to COVID-19, I deserve to be informed so I can implement additional deep cleaning protocols to keep my customers safe. If I run an aftercare program and 5 of my students attend a school that's been closed because of potential exposure, I deserve to have that information so that I can be purposeful in how I group the children in my care and what I communicate to parents. Informed communities are safer communities. Rather than create anxiety, I believe that a centralized, publicly accessible database of school and classroom closures would enable community members to make decisions that maintain public health. That's what we all want, a healthy public. Thank you sincerely for your time and consideration. Warm regards, Molly Connor. Okay. Next, we have another video from Mr. Alfonso Ahua. The video was in French, so I'm gonna share that, and then I'll read his the translation that was sent.
Bonjour, bonjour à tous. Alors, je suis le père Brittany Aoua et de Christine Aoua. Je suis très heureux de vous parler en ce moment et puis vous féliciter pour les efforts que vous faites pour les enfants, pour qu'ils puissent étudier de façon décente. C'est vrai que le fait d'étudier à la maison n'arrange pas vraiment les parents que nous sommes parce que nous sommes obligés souvent d'interrompre nos activités, rester auprès des enfants jusqu'à ce qu'ils finissent tard le soir. C'est vraiment gênant et c'est étouffant. Mais en même temps, pour le bien des enfants, nous sommes souvent obligés de nous y faire, de nous y conformer. Et donc, cette décision de pouvoir permettre aux enfants de reprendre l'école nous sied, mais il faut bien que des dispositions soient prises. Avec cette pandémie qui n'en finit pas, vous voyez, en ce moment en Europe, en France, les gens sont pratiquement confinés avec un couvre-feu. En Belgique, c'est la même chose. Et un peu partout en Europe. Et c'est la même chose partout aujourd'hui, malheureusement, à cause de cette maladie. Enfin, les enfants ont repris. Mais vous voyez combien de fois le saut quantitatif fait qu'aujourd'hui, ils ont été obligés de revoir les conditions dans lesquelles les enfants doivent aller à l'école. Donc, c'est la même chose ici. Il faut pouvoir permettre aux enfants d'apprendre, mais en même temps, il faut aussi prendre des dispositions préventives en permettant aux enfants, parce qu'ils sont tout petits, ils ne savent pas l'utilisation du masque, ils ne savent vraiment pas grand-chose à cette maladie. Il faut leur expliquer, il faut leur parler de l'utilité des masques, et puis surtout permettre aux enfants de savoir utiliser les hand sanitizers, permettre aux enfants de pouvoir être peut-être aspergés, je ne sais pas, un peu comme on le fait en Chine, là, pour leur permettre de pouvoir être désinfectés avant d'aller au cours, désinfecter les places, leur permettre vraiment de pouvoir apprendre dans de bonnes conditions, mais surtout leur enseigner beaucoup de choses concernant cette maladie. Je pense que c'est dans ces conditions seules que les enfants on pourra laisser nos enfants à y aller. Maintenant, vous parlez des tout petits. Kindergarten. Mais moi, j'ai par exemple Christine qui est au Kindergarten, Brittany elle est en first grade. Alors, si une doit aller à l'école et que l'autre doit rester à la maison, je ne vois pas en quoi est-ce que vous aurez réglé le problème. Donc, les parents ne vont pas se départager. Il n'y aura pas un pour aller chercher les enfants ou l'enfant à l'école et puis l'autre pour rester auprès de l'enfant pour pouvoir étudier. Et donc, il faut vraiment revoir toutes ces conditions et voir si les enfants peuvent tous se reprendre ensemble. Je pense que ça pourrait arranger les parents que nous sommes, mais surtout prendre les dispositions idoines pour que les enfants ne puissent vraiment pas nous ramener des maladies et donc ne puissent pas tomber.
All right. Can everyone turn their videos off until we so we can just focus on the whoever's testifying? Thank you. All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm the father of Brittany and Christian. I am very happy to speak with you right now in this moment and congratulate you on the efforts you are making for the children so they continue learning with distance learning. It's true that distance learning at home does not suit the lives of parents because we are often obligated to manage multiple obligations/activities. Work obligations to stay and sit with children into the night until they finish their schoolwork. It's very difficult. But at the same time, for the betterment/benefit of our children, we are often required/obligated to sacrifice/adjust/conform. And so this decision to allow children to return to school in person. But even though the pandemic caught us by surprise, it's not ending anytime soon. You see, especially in Europe and in France, people are practically confined to their homes by curfew. In Belgium, it's the same thing in different places across Europe, and it's the same thing in different countries today, unfortunately, due to this virus, COVID-19. Finally, in these places, children return to school, but you see the whole picture was considered, though this was made clear, and it obliged that there was a need to review and make possible the conditions that would allow children to learn in person. Therefore, it's the same thing here. We have to do what is necessary to permit/allow our children to learn, but at the same time, we have to take a proactive/preventive approach in letting children go back to school because they are very young. They do not really understand how to use their mask. They do not know much about this illness, so we have to explain this to them. We need to speak to them and teach them to use and understand the reason for their mask, and teach them how to use hand sanitizer, and allow children to be able to be maybe, I don't know how to say or translate this, but disinfect and sanitize, allow them to be sanitized and disinfect their hands the way they do in China, and allow them to be disinfected before going to their courses, and also disinfect their places in the classroom and give them an opportunity to learn. But of greatest importance, and this is especially, overall teach them to better understand this illness. I think by doing these things, we can let our children go to school. Now, let me tell you about my little ones, kindergarten, and what this means for me by example. My son is in kindergarten and my daughter is in first grade. So if one goes to school and one has to stay home, I do not understand or see how you manage this problem. Now the parents have to share. Do you leave one child at home while going to pick up the other? One parent has to be home for all this to happen, and the need for all these conditions, it just makes sense for both children to return to school. If we have to, we would organize to support our children in two places, but if there's a proactive approach to implement health and safety measures and to reduce the occurrence of illness, then it's best for all children to return to school. Thank you. Next, we have a video from Ms. Katie Zuvich.
I am speaking tonight to share about the specific threat that COVID-19 presents in classrooms that are not well ventilated, and also to advocate for the district to do a thorough room-by-room inspection of buildings before reopening to students and staff. The science and CDC guidelines are very clear. Good ventilation is key to slowing down person-to-person transmission. Currently, the district has not committed to doing a classroom-by-classroom inspection, a step taken by other large urban school districts in Philadelphia and in New York. Every classroom deserves to be inspected because every student and every staff member needs that assurance of safety. My concern is really personal because I have little assurance that my current classroom, as well as many others in the district, are safe to reopen. First, my classroom is windowless. Second, my classroom already presents challenges that lead me to question how well ventilated that space is. For example, around this time each year, when the heat is first turned on in the building, there have been days that my classroom has exceeded 90 degrees. I don't need to go into how this has affected my kids and their ability to learn. And what raises more questions is that when my students are in that hot classroom and they're struggling to get through a lesson, there are students down the hall that are cold and bundled up in coats. This shows that every room and every building has different conditions that can impact ventilation and learning conditions. The district's current protocol is that school administration will point out any classroom issues and resolve them quickly before welcoming students back. But what will this look like? What actions will be taken after a report is made? And most importantly, how will administrators know which rooms are safe and unsafe without any sort of concrete data? And in the past, I have done this. My administration has done this. Coworkers have done this. We've sounded the alarm about our rooms and its conditions. And when we've done this, I was met with radio silence. I was told that there's nothing that can be done, and any sort of repair has been short-lived. I'm really concerned that this same scene is going to play out when we return. When asked, I was told the district does not have the capacity to reevaluate every room. So let's be really clear. If a classroom cannot be inspected, the district does not have the capacity to reopen that room. Equity is not putting Black and Brown children who are unjustly at higher risk for COVID-19 complications in unsafe rooms.
Okay, next we have Dr. Meg Berkobine.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Meg Berkobine, and I am currently an ESOL teacher at Frederick Douglass High School. I am speaking in regard to the in-person learning health and safety protocols for COVID-19, and I would like to express my deep, deep concern that North Avenue, that the school district is trying to push us back into classrooms when it's clearly unsafe. I refuse as an educator and as a human to put my life at risk, to put my students' lives at risk, to put any of our community members' lives at risk, to hurry back into a classroom when it's clearly not safe. And it's not safe for a variety of reasons. Even if we did have, the money to put in more cleaning solutions, more staff, we know now that the COVID-19 virus is communicated, is spread through aerosols and also through feces. So what this means is that if you are in a classroom without proper ventilation, you are more than likely to catch this, okay? And that's not even to talk about how it spreads through particles of feces. And should we remark here, there are no toilet lids in our schools. I'm really just speechless that we're even having this conversation instead of trying to make virtual school better for our students and for our staff and for our teachers and for our community. I'm a new teacher here, and I really wanted to believe in this school district. I came in with a very open heart, and I'm disheartened now. It is not safe to return, and I personally will not return if we are forced to go back.
Okay, give me one moment. Okay, next we have a live comment from Mr. Andre Cooper from Baltimore Design School. Andre, are you on?
Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Frederick. I'm the community school site specialist and SGA advisor and youth ambassador liaison. So I work with Andre, and he's having some technical difficulties tonight. He was actually going to be speaking for our SGA class president that has done some research and some surveying with our families and our students. And so I'm going to report on her behalf. So I am reporting on behalf of the SGA president, Aaliyah Reed, who had to work tonight. Aaliyah surveyed more than 50 families, staff, and 25 students in the Baltimore Design School community to learn their thoughts on returning to school during the COVID pandemic. She received a lot of feedback. Students were more than eager to return to school, saying, yes, please let school open back up. And I miss my teachers and my friends. She often heard, I'm so sick of Zoom. Speaking from a student point of view, this is not something easy to adjust to. So everyone is pretty much tired of online work and would rather get back to school and the social part of life. As a student, you are not thinking about the consequences of what ifs during situations like this, because it's the parents that have to deal with the outcome if you were to get sick. The parents, on the other hand, are thinking about all the possible outcomes. Due to the fact that it is now flu season on top of the worldwide pandemic, it's not a good idea to rush into putting kids back into school. Many parents said that because of asthma, diabetes, or other health conditions, they would not let their child return to school this year. A lot of parents also pointed out that if schools were to open back, sending their kids back to school was not even an option. It was also brought up that a lot more kids are out in the streets getting into trouble due to the fact that they have nothing else to do, and online school is allowing them a lot more free time that's not productive. The majority of the feedback was to let school remain closed for now until at least after winter has passed. More than 38 families agreed. We also had families offer conditions to returning. Only 9 families were in favor of returning to school. We have quotes and data available upon request. Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to say I've been in touch with a lot of families, as a community school site specialist. I've had to do a lot of the food resourcing, childcare, technology resourcing, and I can tell you that I understand why the district is struggling with this. It is not an easy decision, and I don't think in any point along the spectrum, after listening to some of these videos, that the district is out to not be transparent or not make a decision or to send students back irresponsibly. I just understand the undertaking this all is.
You're coming on time. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. That's fine. That was my personal opinion. I wanted to speak on behalf of the students, so thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a video from Ms. Yvette Reed.
Hello, my name is Yvette Reed, and I'm a teacher at Creative City Public Charter School. And I'm making this video today just to share with you my concerns about returning back to school. I am a teacher who is at high risk. I have asthma, and I fear for my life. I do not think it's safe to open schools. I have several students with health conditions, which make them also vulnerable. It's just not the right time to send them back into school. I know that some students are not able to access the learning at this time, but it's better to be safe than to be sorry. We can find other ways to engage them. Maybe we can send packets to those kids who aren't able to engage academically until we can get things straight with their technology or get them safely back into the buildings with everyone else. This is really scary. I had a grandmother who passed away from COVID, so this thing hits home, and several of my parents are.
And that was the only video we received. Next, we have Mr. Christopher Bilal commenting live. Mr. Bilal, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. So I love James Baldwin, and he says that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And we have to face the facts that the school system is on the verge of contributing to a public health crisis in a city with a legacy of sanctioning violence against children through inequitable public policies that are similar to what the district is proposing. This is a state of emergency. Please help us. Nurses are needed at every school. City Schools has not guaranteed that a full-time school nurse will be present for every school that is offering in-person instruction. Students and staff need and deserve full-time on-site nurses. People are waiting for an update, and it is unacceptable that this has not been addressed in district plans. Representatives of the nurses and health aides who staff City Schools' health suites and wellness rooms report that on any given day, nearly 30% of staff are absent due to following the CDC guidelines that instruct employees to stay home when they're experiencing any of the COVID-19 symptoms. The district has not been able to articulate if a plan exists for when a nurse calls out sick. This is complicated by the fact that the house suites are staffed by employees of the city health department rather than the employees of City Schools. Regardless, a comprehensive nursing plan must be established prior to any reopening of schools. Also, we need this plan. City Schools will not commit to a comprehensive COVID-19 testing plan for students or staff, and my colleagues have engaged in several conversations with district leadership about testing, citing what other large school systems have committed to, and the need for the district to create a comprehensive plan that can be enforced through an MOU with a union. The district has rejected this and has said that they do not intend to perform proactive testing on employees or students. And we've been told for several months that the district is negotiating with some health providers to secure rapid response testing for students and staff who exhibit symptoms. However, no details have been released. As of now, the district's health and safety guide simply says that if a student is experiencing symptoms, the school nurses should communicate with the family about testing options. Finally, detailed public ventilation assessments are needed, as are occupancy maximum signage. We need signage in our school system to tell us about the maximum occupancy capacity of these classrooms. This is a critical issue within the school systems, and we're still looking for more information about that. The district will not commit to a ventilation assessment of each classroom. Rather, they are only requiring seasonal ventilation assessments that are already part of facility checks. All spaces that will be occupied need to be accessed. Maximum occupancy capacity for each classroom needs to be posted. While my colleagues are pleased that the district is investing in MERV 13 filters, such measures are meaningless for classrooms that lack working ventilation systems. Every Baltimore City educator knows of classrooms. Thank you so much. Help us avert a public health crisis, please. Thank you, parents. Thank you, school staff.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Wanda McCray, speaking live. Ms. McCray, are you there? Ms. McCray? Okay, we will come back to Ms. McCray. After that, we have a video from Ms. Brittany Johnstone.
Good evening. My name is Brittany Johnstone. I'm a school psychologist with Baltimore City Public Schools. I have the privilege of serving two amazing school communities of pre-K through 12th grade students. I'm reaching out today because I have concerns about the district's proposed reopening plan. I have unanswered questions about how related service providers will provide services, legally mandated IEP services, in the cohort model. Will we stay virtual while our students go back to school? Will we just become members of multiple cohorts, increasing risk and exposure for ourselves and our students and the teachers that we support? These questions need to be answered before anybody, students, teachers, PSRPs, or related service providers, are asked to put their lives on the line and have more of us re-enter buildings. My second thing I want to point out is that virtual learning is working for us. My service delivery sessions have been so much fun with students and their families. I have never had closer relationships with the families I support than during this extremely difficult time. Across the district, we have really banded together with the families we support to make sure that they're able to build routines and provide their children and students with consistency and engaging ways to make school work at home. I ask you, please don't take that away from us. Don't create disruption and chaos where there doesn't need to be any. Let us continue to hone our skills in the virtual learning space for the better of students and for ourselves. Thank you for your time. Goodbye.
Okay, next we have a video from Mr. Jason Butler.
Good evening. My name is Jason Butler. I am a father of 4. My oldest goes to Carverville Tech in the 9th grade. My younger 3 are students at Liberty Elementary. I have a 4th grader and 2 first graders. So looking at Baltimore City Schools mission statement, which states that all students will learn in environments that embody a culture and climate of excellence, mutual respect, and safety. I definitely feel that there needs to be an emphasis with the COVID reopening on that mutual respect and safety. We definitely, if the plans are to move forward with schools reopening, especially with the flu and cold and flu season among us and the pandemic rates rising, we need to make sure that we have complete transparency, accountability, and that we're able to manage the challenges that are going to be presented for our schools. We need to make sure that each and every single one of our schools has appropriate health staff on hand to provide testing. We need to make sure that there is accurate reporting of testing results and an up-to-date database of active cases, and we don't want to violate anyone's personal privacy, but we do need to know if there's an incident at any school, if there's any kids, staff, or faculty, administrators that may have been exposed. We just need to operate with an abundance of caution and make sure that all safeguards are in order before we even attempt to get any of these kids in the schools. We need to make sure that we have the ability to test everyone, staff and teachers included. So this is not something that we can take lightly. With the numbers increasing and a clear push to reopen these schools at this trying time. If it's going to happen, we have to make sure that it's done safely. We have to make sure that it's done right. The last thing that I think we can all agree that Baltimore City needs is to wind up with more headlines for the wrong reasons. We definitely don't need to be on Project Baltimore or anything else if we're going to have this happen. We definitely don't need to see kids or teachers getting sick and succumbing to this disease. So I hope that you guys make the right choice. Thanks.
Okay, we have I believe two videos that require translation. Chief Hike Hubbard, I believe, are you on? Yes. Are the translators ready yet?
I'm checking right now, Christian. Give me 1 second, please.
Okay. Well, I guess while we wait, I don't know if any of the commissioners had questions from earlier.
Christian, I've sent the translators the link to the meeting. They'll be joining in just momentarily. I appreciate you moving on just a moment. I want to make sure these parents' voices are allowed to be heard. It was just a struggle to get translators at the last minute.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Christian,
Thank you.
I can ask a question if you're trying to.
We got some time, a little bit of time though.
I guess my questions, some great points were made in terms of communication. I think we've gotten better, but it's not perfect in terms of communication to the board, to the public, to the newspapers, to City Hall. So we're elevating the game, but I still think it's still a work in progress. The other thing is transparency. I think we're being more transparent, but I think we can only work with the information we have. So I think transparency, I agree, that's truly important. It would be great to have as much data as we possibly can, because I'm thinking in terms of safety. I'm thinking in terms of family participation, teacher engagement, and also one thing that's the elephant in the room we haven't talked about is transportation, because I think MTA is really, that's really going to be a concern for all of us. And I guess one thing I'd like to see, and maybe we can work through, is the best practices in terms of what we learned this summer, how we applied what we learned this summer to the learning centers, the 15 learning centers, and how that can help us on November 9, where it can help us on November 16th. I guess lastly, in terms of teachers, this is not, it's not definitive, but are there some teachers who are willing to volunteer to come to schools, or is it prohibited because of collective bargaining or some kind of agreement where even the ones who want to volunteer to go to CTE sites or special education sites, are they available to do that if they wish to do that? I know it's a litany of things I've thrown out there, but it's just something for my plate. Thank you.
Christian, this is Commissioner Brooks. I also would like to add in, I'm not sure if there was going to be a response to Commissioner Reed's questions, but if not, just wanted to also echo particularly on it was on slide 23, where we talked specifically about our competency or our capacity to do contact tracing. And there were some metrics quoted, particularly around sort of having the appropriate number of contact tracers. I'd love to hear more about where that number came from, how that was arrived at that, and then how is that going to account for the new and coming students that we're expecting as we roll out greater and greater in-person learning. Also, I'm really interested in this whole notion of continuing at the thread of transparency around data, particularly around sort of, what's the rate of contact tracing? So if you're doing contact tracing, what's the rate of success in actually reaching those people in order to make sure that we're getting the adequate number and making sure that everyone's safe? Because there is a number there in which we need to be our target number needs to be reached. Otherwise, our efforts are ineffective. More specifically, we were talking and that I'm very clear that our contact tracing is, they said full-time staff. How many full-time staff do we have that are contact tracers? And how many will we need in order to be effective? Currently, what I understood is that we have multiple people doing small bits of things, but how many full-time staff do we have in order to do our contact tracing? And I also think that when I'm looking at my notes, and particularly around teachers. So most importantly, I am really committed to ensuring that our district and particularly our staff feel like they're supported. And I think some of the decisions that are constantly being made, particularly by the CEO, does not always align with that. And so I'm interested in figuring out, for the families who you're requiring and mandating to come back, have you been in conversations with them about their particular needs, what's going on in their lives that would potentially, this exposure would jeopardize their family? And I think we need to do better as a district at ensuring that we actually care for our staff as well as the parents and the families that entrust us with their young people. And so I want us to get more clear, particularly around our communication and our strategies and approaches. I am not convinced that we have the capacity to do the appropriate contact tracing for this district, I would not send my child to school in this district currently, given that the current capacity that I know as a commissioner, I am still not convinced. And I'm waiting to be convinced that we have the skill and the capacity, and I'm just waiting for it. And so please, when we have some more transparency around the data, the metrics, our capacity to serve and do it well, and particularly the testing, rapid testing, which is required or should be required to ensure that everyone's safe. I just need more information, and it needs to be transparent, and it needs to be on our dashboard, and everyone needs to be able to see it on a regular basis, because currently what we're doing right now is having people to wish and hope, and all of those things are wonderful, but in order to build trust, you actually have to show people that you have the skill set and the capacity and the competency to do and live up to what their values and expectations are. And currently, I am not convinced that we do that.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Mr. Gant, do we have the last two ready at this point?
Hi, Commissioner Chinya.
Yes.
Okay, so there was a miscommunication. Only one of them needed to be translated, and the other one, the translator reviewed the video and did not want to get the dialect of Arabic wrong. So what we'll do is send it out for translation so it can be part of the board forum minutes, and we'll also share it with you all for comment. So at this point, we can close the forum whenever you're ready.
Okay. Was there any other commissioner prior to my closing? I want to thank folks for the comments. We have a lot of comments as well as questions and things that we need to clarify and get more information on in terms of responses. But any other commissioner before any additional? If not, we will be working with staff in terms of processing the comments and responding to the questions. As Commissioner Reed said, and several people have said, communication is really the key here in terms of being certain that that folks do clearly understand what this plan is all about. I hope that you will go back and review the presentation, because I do think that there was additional information that was given that does give some more detail, and we will work in terms of even clarifying that further. So at this time, I want to thank everyone and hope that you have a good evening. And this will end our forum for this evening. If you have additional questions that you would like to send in, please feel free to send those into the board office, and we will add those to the list from tonight and continue to get more information for you. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, and please stay safe.